Are we live?
I don't know. You have the controls.
Um, we had technical issues as I was finishing up my meal. We'd like to a better man or a worse man, I don't know, depending on how you look at it, would conceal that, bury it, and not reveal it. But I find it edifying to it's funny to self-inflict shine the light, a little bit. But we don't want to shine too much light either.
No.
Because, I mean, But so welcome to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast, everyone. We're your hosts, Mark Lindsay over on the West Coast and Eloy Escagedo down here in Florida. And welcome.
Good evening. What's the good word? What's the word of the day?
Time.
Time? Okay. Time. Is it on your side or no?
Is it on our side? Yes and no.
Reference to a Rolling Stones song, which you've obviously never heard.
Time is on my side. Yes, it is.
Yep. Okay.
No, I've heard, just because I don't like the Rolling Stones doesn't mean that my friends endlessly played it while I had to suffer through that. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah,
so
I get you.
We're exposed, even though, to the things we don't like, even though,
this is not the topic I wanted to talk about. Not the topic at all.
Okay.
But I have to ask you, how many times a month do you find yourself walking around doing whatever it is, just kind of humming or singing a song that you don't like but can't get out of your head? It happens to me probably at least twice a week. It's like, what are you doing humming that? You hate that song.
Yeah. Sometimes while I'm doing the garden, I'm thinking, it just pops into my head, young man.
Oh man.
Maybe I'm in a grocery store and I'll hear, I'm trying to think of all the ridiculous songs as possible.
It happens to me. I'm out pushing the lawnmower or something like that, and I've got Billie Jean playing in my head, and I'm like, you don't even like that song. Knock it off.
But which one of the YMCA, while I'm hoeing the ground, which one do I do in my, do you turn into like the Indian one of the YMCA, or do you turn into the leather guy?
I think probably the closest you would come would be the construction worker at that point.
They're all bad.
Yeah,
all of them.
I know, big time. Okay, absolutely, totally unrelated to the topic that I wanted to talk about. Last week's episode, I was kind of down on everything, I was cheesed off about having to buy a new coffee maker. I was cheesed off at people. The world was just wrong. But believe it or not, another trip to Wally World kind of reinvigorated me a little bit, cheered me up a lot, because I saw something on my last trip to Wally World. That's been 3 or 4 days now. I saw something that I haven't seen there in a long time.
Employees?
No.
Okay.
Vinyl record albums.
Oh.
And music CDs.
Okay.
I haven't seen either of those in a Walmart in a lot of years. And it kind of, brought me, I won't say restored my faith in humanity, but I think there may be hope now. And we're talking about some of the older albums, like, Doobie Brothers was up there and a couple of other things. But new music coming out on vinyl also.
Wow.
And that was encouraging, as well as several different turntables up there for sale. Well, USB and standalone. And in fact, I pointed to one at Linda. I said, look, they're selling turntables again. Do you believe that? And I'm talking about the old school retro record players, as we called them. Just, it was a self-contained unit, looked like a briefcase. You lifted up the lid and there was your record player. Those are back for sale now. Now, I don't know if you can plug it into a computer to rip music onto a digital format or not, or if they were just standalone players and that's all. But the fact that they're actually selling them and they're selling vinyl albums again was very encouraging. It was a small section, nothing like what you and I grew up with, but it was actually encouraging.
And so what are the reasons that bring happiness to you specifically when it comes to the medium? Like, what are the things that make you happy about it?
It's kind of that nostalgic feel, in that maybe something from the past, maybe folks have decided that something from the past wasn't so bad after all, and it's actually coming back and becoming popular again.
Toilet papers from the
Because,
past.
well, this is true. And in fact, I have a couple of lists pulled up here to kind of rattle your cage with and see what you think. But it never went out of style, where vinyl records did and CDs did, because it wasn't that long ago people were going, well, who buys records anymore? Well, who buys CDs anymore? Well, evidently a lot of people, if they're still publishing music on both. And if the big box stores that worked so hard to phase them out are bringing them back, that tells me that there's a demand there.
You know what was the best day ever for small woodland furry animals?
What's that?
The day they invented toilet paper.
Oh, geez.
All right, continue.
Yeah, Lord help you if you lived in the desert, because all that was out there were lizards.
Yeah,
I didn't say that. See, it's my edit, so I can do this.
No, see, but you're not aware, because since you're not a desert dweller, although you were. But see, I'm gonna bull crap so much right now. I was gonna invent. I'm not gonna do it, but I was gonna invent a smooth cactus. A smooth cactus that one could
Yeah,
clean
see, and that's one of those cliches. Lived in the Nevada desert for 15 years, and the only cactus I ever saw was in the plant section at Home Depot. They don't grow there. They do down in the Arizona desert and Texas and New Mexico and what have you, and even in Southern California, but I never saw a cactus in the wild at all.
I don't think I've ever seen all I've seen is the ones that come in little whatever pottery things. And I've never seen a actual. We don't really. You can plant them probably.
Oh, sure.
Just about anywhere. I mean, it's like they're rugged, but we don't have that. What we do have is all sorts of. But anyways, we're going
digressing.
Yeah, we'll end up. Who knows where we'll end up in Timbuktu or something. And
what it did was it kind of made me start thinking, and I'm talking about seeing the albums in Walmart there. And it's funny you mentioned how much pleasure I got out of that. What was it that gave me so much pleasure? And I can't name any one thing, but I think it was overall the feeling of nostalgia. And that kind of a little bit of, see, I told you it was good.
Yeah. But the nostalgia thing is, I think, the main, because what are they how many kids, who knows? I don't see. Do you see this as overtaking the I think this is more like a
no
what's the word, like a what would be the word, Mark? Not a fad, but more like not a gimmick. There's a word for it. A trend, like a little
not with younger folks so much as and maybe there is that like I'm just not aware of.
Type. There's a word that would fit in it, but
yeah, I know where you're going, but I can't think of it either. But what I think it is, because it and I have no illusions, it's not going to replace Spotify playlists or anything like that. It's just not going to. but it's reintroducing music for the pure enjoyment of the music in the home, which is something I think a lot of people got away from and are wanting to return to. And we've talked about it a lot,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, too much, some would say. But I do see that starting to come back a little bit in the folks that I've talked to and in correspondence online and what have you.
Yeah.
And the resurgence of a lot of the classic music, never mind the availability of albums at thrift shops and pawn shops all over the country, the ability to go get those and actually play them and listen to them just for the pure enjoyment of listening to them. People are starting to see that, yes, that is an activity of its own. You can drop the needle on the record and do whatever you're doing, and you're not futzing with playlists or scrambling this or doing whatever. You're not messing with your device. You're doing whatever it is you're doing, and this is in the background. And man, this is cool. You know, that kind of a thing. Or just sit there and focus on the music.
Isn't there a convenience factor that, well, okay, so would you agree that, I don't know that it's even unobvious. I don't know how you could get away from it, but the convenience factor of digital,
yes,
is so just all consuming because it facilitates quick,
yes,
satisfaction. But um personally, there is, like you mentioned, a lot for me, a loss of, I don't want to call it quiet time because we're listening to music, but personal time, or
yes,
a little space of your own with the music, because we had to do the physical thing and connect it, and if it's cassette rewind, although it was more special in a way with records were more special.
yes. And I agree with you there. And as far as convenience is concerned, that's why I say that the vinyl album will never replace the digital download or the Spotify playlist, because it is convenient. And that was the number one thing that killed records off to begin with, was they have to be treated gently and they're not portable. If you had one of those little record players and you could stomach the tinny sound that came out of them, fine. Most people didn't like those record players.
No.
And records are not conducive to a big party out at a park with a bunch of people. And that's where digital downloads shine, is because they're 100% portable.
Yeah.
You can Bluetooth or plug in your phone to a car stereo or a standalone speaker system and just rock the house down.
I'll add this. Somebody mentioned, but I'll like double it. We're not supposed to until the final part, but it's an interesting thing. People suggest a lot that, and others disagree. I agree with the statement. Records sound better,
Yep.
than the rest of the media.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, and they've had tests on it, and they explain, and so there's a lot of information out there. But in my personal case, I feel that that's true. I remember it being true. Like back home, back home. I'm at home. I would lay the needle down, and my speakers, the music, and crispness. There was this
Yep.
this like fry crisp. I was gonna
Yep.
say Christmas, crispness, coming,
Yes.
out from
There's
the vinyl into the. Let me just say this: it was very, very, very acute.
yes.
But, well, let me just say this last bit. But I've also thought, maybe also, although that's true, maybe my hearing, as when I was younger, everything was, because you know how things get, as you get older, things go a little bit more muted slightly, ears get muted, eyes, everything gets muted slightly. So not everything is as pristine as it was when once
Well,
it
and
was.
that's, you just said the proper word. There is a warmth to analog music from vinyl that just is not captured on CD or any kind of a digital media. There's a warmth there. Digital to me is cold and precise, almost mechanical, almost too perfect. There's a warmth there in vinyl that just isn't there in digital. And I think people are discovering that. But again, that is subjective because you're 100% right. Everybody's hearing acuity is a little bit different. And what sounds good to you may not sound good to me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So whether music from a vinyl album sounds better than a digital media,
Yeah.
I think that's subjective.
Yeah.
I
It's like
really do.
It's like your vision. You know, you look at the album cover. Man, I I could swear I remember seeing a big ass pyramid on this Pink Floyd cover, but I'm so damn blind I can't even see the freaking.
Well, that's
pyramid.
because you're trying to look at the cassette. You got to look at the 12-inch album cover. You know
Dude,
how hard it is to put a poster in a cassette box.
Are these the Beatles or are these the Monkeys? I can't.
It,
Hey, bring me the freaking magnifying glass, will you, Joe? It's just it's one of those things where there's a little bit of loss. Now the hearing part, I don't know. Like I suspect that it's not. If you ever cup your ears behind you, behind your ear, the back part of you, and you listen to that is fidelity. It's
a bigger surface. You're able to gather more sound waves. Sure.
Hey, wait. When you just said that, it sounded like you were screaming because I could hear everything is specific. But yeah, so we have this sort of like, so if you ever cup your ears and you move them around, you can hear oscillation, frequencies, and so I think that we lose a little bit of that as we go.
We sure do, and a lot of times you do it to ourselves with headphones and turning up the volume a bit too loud.
Yeah,
things like that. And you and I both have been woodworkers and builders and things of that nature, so we're around power tools. I worked on helicopters, and being in the Army, you're around weapons firing and things like that. It takes its toll on the ears after a while. Now, luckily, I don't have tinnitus or anything like that, so I can still distinguish tones. I don't have any interference that way, but it does take its toll. And there are certain tonal ranges that I hear, they travel better for me, and there are certain tonal ranges that I just don't hear. I have to kind of turn my head and listen and really focus on what's either being said or portrayed or what have you.
There's also some genetic tendencies. I have that thing. It's called, if any of you guys have done the DNA through any of the sites, especially the ones you can download your raw DNA, you could upload it and you're not afraid of being cloned, because that's coming too. I'm kidding, or maybe not, I don't know, but there's a site where it'll give you for free, because what they do is they use your data amongst everybody else's data to pit it against results on different tests and stuff, and they write reports on it and stuff. It's all scientific stuff, but they need your information, genetic, to know certain studies and results and whatnot. And they do studies on hearing, on eyesight, personality studies, and these are genuine, like serious, peer-reviewed stuff, and you could go to the actual scientific pages, and they have one on hearing, and plus other things, but they have one on hearing, and there's different, they pick for different things and different studies. And it's classified under intelligence for some reason, the hearing thing. And I have to reread it, but what I remember is that, and mine was in the middle. They check for your markers, and then they put it against a population source that they try to gather for it. Some are small sources, some are broad sources, accurate to less accurate. They're studies, and what I think it's roundabout this, is that your ability to capture hearing through hearing information and such and all that, because that's also part of the thing, because you could be strong in one department and weak as hell in another, and we're all a sort of mismatched mix of all these good things and bad things, and the hearing one is an important one, because if we don't if we can't or even process what we're hearing, if we don't have that ability, we're nowhere, so there is that there too. I just dropped that because I think it's kind of within the realm of what we're talking about in this particular thing.
Yeah, in this particular sub discussion. And there's a lot to that. I mean, there's a lot of it is genetic, a lot of it is environmental. We know that we can do things that will damage our hearing as well as our vision, but there are things that we can do to conserve it, and, but your ears will only be as good as they are. Doesn't matter what you do. To preserve it, they're only going to be as good as they are. And if you just have crummy hearing, you just have crummy hearing. I mean, there are artificial methods of boosting and amplifying, but your ears are only going to be as good as they are.
Did you see my face freeze because I have something to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just no, I'm curious because I saw myself going like this. And I froze in it, like saying, "Hey, Mark, I got something. I got something. I got something."
Look, much like a prairie dog popping out of his hole. Wait, what? Huh? What?
Talking about what you just said, or what we're talking about, I saw some of you guys out there might have seen it too. I think it's weird, but it's interesting. Have you seen that new ear device, which attaches not into your little ear socket, but behind the ear, close to your, or pressing up against your bone of the back of your ear, and you can receive and send phone calls, listen to music, and the process. Have you heard of this?
I've heard something about it, not a lot. Is this supposed to be a hearing aid? Or is this supposed to be just a new device for telecommunications? Or all of the above?
They're working on that, and some military, probably U.S., if I recall well, are using it for better communication on the field.
Makes sense.
Because they don't have to have something prodded into their ear, this or that. It just goes behind your ear. And they talk about the technology where it vibrates the sound into your ear, through your bone, into your ear, and it picks it up high def. It doesn't have to be through your hole. And they're saying that for people hard of hearing, not just bratty kids in school and say, "Are you hard of hearing, Timmy?" But legitimately hard of hearing. They're saying that this is a huge solution as well that's coming down the pike. It goes right behind, attached like that. It's like some futuristic. The part that obviously it's like it's new stuff, but it kind of, there's something creepy of vibrations through your bone for you to capture the hearing. Initially, that's what I thought, and I still feel like, well, that's kind of a little. I don't want transmissions coming. It almost. Then again, that's the whole conspiracy thing that one would think this is just technology, but something going through your ear seems invasive. Even though it's external and it's not invasive, but something about contact with the outer part and it's transmitting that information into your skull brain is sci-fi-ish and kind of weird. Final thing I'll say about this. I think in the documentary, they got it from this whole idea that back in the day, some people in some culture, I don't know where the heck, I'd have to revisit it and find it, they would use some tube that they'd stick in their mouth. Oh, I remember. It was either, who was the one that went deaf? Mozart?
Well, Mozart, Beethoven. No,
They all went deaf?
I don't think Mozart did. I think Beethoven. I know Beethoven went deaf.
Beethoven went deaf. Okay, so they said that this company had the idea, or they suggested, that Beethoven would stick his ear onto the piano, but he would also take a piece of hollowed out something or other and put it up against his mouth, his lips, his teeth, hold it right in his teeth, and the vibrations would come through, and he would pick up the sound. And even though he was going deaf or was deaf to whatever degree, he could capture the notes perfectly, and he kept working. Very, very interesting. And the fact that people, just that solution back then, a very interesting thing. So
there are singers who are deaf who rely on bass and drums. They stand close to the bass player and the drummer because they can pick up the vibrations.
okay.
And that's how they keep time with the music.
And how do you make them stop? Well, how do you do you smack him with the guitar? Hey, dude, we're going home. As he keeps going, how do you?
Well, when the drums stop, you stop.
Right.
Or when the bass stops, you stop.
No, but I'm just saying, like just so it has to. That's a very. It has to be a very, because okay, music is a tough one with the hearing thing.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin, Felix Iraldi, was legally blind. He couldn't see. He was blind. And it progressed.
Uh-huh.
He was a musician, music teacher, music engineer. Had a recording studio in his home where he did all this, but he had that situation, terrible. But he could do the music because obviously Stevie Wonder,
Well,
what
sure.
is it?
George
Jose
Shearing.
Feliciano.
George Shearing, Ray Charles. I mean,
Yeah. But reverse that with the hearing side of it, it's like, whoa.
Well, these were, from what I've seen, these were people who were born with the ability to hear, and then over time, that ability went away. Yeah. So they had a frame of reference. It's not like they didn't know what music was. And most of them were singing before they lost their ability to hear. So it's just you adapt in certain ways. As certain senses deteriorate and go away, you adapt in other ways. So I watched my grandfather do that with his vision. As he went blind, I watched him relearn how to do the things he'd been doing for years and years and years. Watching that man drive nails was an experience, I'll tell you what. He'd put the nail between his index finger and middle finger with his fingernails pointing down, and he'd put his thumb over the head of the nail, and he'd swing the hammer. And as he got the head of that hammer, he'd get his arm into a certain position where he knew that hammer was about ready to hit his thumb. He'd move his thumb off to the side like that and smack that nail every time. But that's how he kept track of where that nail was. It was between his fingers, and he knew his body. He knew where those fingers were. And then when he got to a certain point, he just kind of estimated, and very rarely did he miss.
Yeah, I mean, my cousin, like, okay, you have to imagine, you'd walk into the house, and it's funny. I'll just mention this. So I was obviously he was older than I, by a good amount, and I was born and grew up and didn't really and in the 80s and stuff, would visit and stuff, but rarely and stuff. I had recently a year or two back recovered footage from the 1970s and such, and I'm in that footage as a baby being held by him, his father, as a kid. But I really became acquainted. So it's funny how people know you, like familiar people, family and friends of family and such. They know you, but you start knowing them when you get older, but they've always known you. And it's a weird situation. Right. So I started, visiting my cousin, and he would, as I became older, because of my interest in music, and we shared that interest. I learned a lot from him. He would navigate the board roll his chair to one end of the board, work on that, and roll it to the other, then go over to all the compressors and all the different things and the tapes and whatnot, and he'd work on it, never asking anything of where what button was. And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds, literally, I'm not even exaggerating. I have photos, hundreds and hundreds of buttons that he would mess with in order to get the sounds and whatnot that he wanted for recording. And I, with vision and whatnot, would look, and I had no idea what any of the buttons did except the one that was red that says record or play. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, he had all these buttons and stuff. And it was like, wow. Now, the one thing he would get up and go into the recording portion of the studio, and he would frequently, he would do, miscalculate, or not frequently, but he'd occasionally miscalculate and smack his shin on a corner of something or other. And so he would always have, my cousin Felix, many times, not always, but many times, he would have bruising on his legs, the front half, because he'd stumble into something, but he could then travel to the kitchen and he'd make whatever he was making. He himself, boom, 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 walking. He was careful,
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't use a cane in the house. He had it figured out. Another interesting thing, last thing I'll say, because I don't want to, I don't want to go down, but it's interesting with the vision and stuff. If he had to go and do something, there was a separate office, which was his father's office, the late Dr. Ezequiel Giraldi. And he'd go to his office. He had passed away already. It was just Felix. And he'd sit down and have to do some paperwork. He'd use that as that purpose. And he knew how to go and stuff. The typewriters and computers and everything he owned back then were all had Braille. Everything was set up. But the board wasn't, but he had a dedicated writing apparatus for such activities and stuff.
Yeah, my grandfather learned Braille, and he absolutely hated it. He was in his 50s, his mid to late 50s, when he said it was learning how to read all over again and learning how to how to communicate all over again. And he just absolutely despised the experience. But on a related note, you were talking about how Felix could navigate his home. I don't even remember where we were, but one time he just all of a sudden stopped and said, "Are we at the corner?" And I said, "No, we got about another maybe 10 feet. And he said, "Okay." And I said, "What do you mean? What's going on?" He said, "I lost count of my steps." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, I have to count my steps to be able to navigate. And sometimes I will lose count when some kind of a thought pops in or something confuses me." And that's all it was. He would know that to get from his chair to the bathroom, you stood up 2 steps forward, 1 step to the left to get around the coffee table, and then a straight shot down the hallway, a certain number of steps, and then turn right. Things that I would never think about. He knew, exactly where certain things were positioned. And if you moved anything, oh, you heard about it. But it's familiarity. And he despised learning Braille, but he came to understand the importance of it because he did use it quite a bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that we kind of take certain things for granted.
Yeah.
And don't understand how a person without that ability manages, but they have their own ways of doing things. It's not an either or thing,
Yeah, it's so I've mentioned it or hinted at it in the past. The way I kind of see it. Nothing is concrete, but I kind of, it's not like I'm dead set on one thing or another,
Sure.
but um, but you think things and you leave them on the table as possibilities. I do,
Hmm.
and I think to myself that in one way we're simply observers.
Hmm.
Um, as far as know, it just everything is. I think this is obvious too. Everything is sensations and senses,
Hmm.
like our sense of touch, so we can know what a material, its texture is and temperature is. Our eyes, our ears have also these different abilities, and everything is rushing in from this world around us. And then we have this secondary thing that I consider a secondary thing, and it might not be, it might be, I don't know, which is our mind, that processes all this, and we box it up in different filing cabinets in our mind, connect different concepts to each other in our own language in our mind, even though we speak the English or speak the whatever. But we make associations that are beyond actual language in our mind and our computer.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is that it's the human beings are. This is an astounding, like you said, taking for granted and whatnot. I take everything for granted by and tenfold. But I recognize that at times that I do, and I also am in awe, and yet at the same time, just completely um, lowballing the importance of it
Oh yeah.
from one point to the next. And there's all these contradictions, but about
We all do.
appreciation, yeah, I think we all do to different degrees. But as far as appreciation is concerned, and awe and whatnot, it's in the fact that we exist, whatever that means, is in awe. And the fact that we can even suggest that something is awe
Yeah.
inspiring or all, you know, just the whole experience, and the fact that I'm communicating to you, which we've
And
touched on before, these are things that are
well, but it's
incalculable.
the ability to do that. Just, the human brain is such a complex organism or organ. The only reason we know as much about it as we do is because we're able to study the effects of damage to it. We wouldn't know anything at all about the human brain. It's not like you can take it out and play with it and then put it back. We wouldn't know anything at all if we weren't able to study what happens when it's damaged in certain areas and in certain ways. Because, like, a blunt force trauma is going to be a different type of damage and a different injury than a lack of oxygen. We know that. And the only way we know that is because we've been able to study people who have had both of those things happen, obviously separate people. But we've been able to study those cases. If we weren't able to study those cases, we wouldn't know a thing about the brain, you know. So but yeah, I mean, it is fascinating and scary in a number of ways, but it beats the alternative. So
Well, we don't know that either, on one level. So I guess what I was suggesting is a lot of things, without saying it. Just sometimes things that have no explanation. If you're humble, if somebody's humble about just the experience, sensation, life itself,
mm,
it's so unexplicable that for me, and different people have different
mhm.
results depending on whatever they arrive at, whatever decision they
Yeah.
come at. But it's so surreal and unanswerable that I can't help but be amazed, and yet at the same time, completely unthankful, and
Well, yeah.
ignore the all inspiring stuff. There's so many constant, never-ending contradictions that it's such a maze. This life, and how does one? I don't want to go really down this thing, but I'll just say this last thing about this. I know I'm going in an area that it's open to whatever, but the fact that one looks at an item and makes a judgment call, this is what this is, and just the whole experience of walking through life and having multiple roads and trying to decide what things are. The whole thing is all inspiring and yet confusing. It's just an incredible thing. I guess I'm in awe of life at this moment, and I'm recognizing it at this moment, and then the next moment I'll be completely forgetting all that and talking whatever else.
Yeah. Sure, but that's what we do as people. We'll have moments of clarity, clear thought, and reason, and then squirrel. Oh, look at the shiny thing over there. That's I don't know. There's a Australian comedian by the name of Tim Minchin, and he did a speech at his alma mater where he was basically giving advice to the graduating class, and he told them, remember, it's all luck. It's all luck. You're incredibly lucky to be here. You're incredibly lucky to be alive, because if things didn't happen exactly the way they happened, none of us would be here. So it's 100% luck. And it's pointless, because we're all going to grow up, we're all going to work for a living, and in the end, we're all going to die. And it doesn't matter.
Who was that said that?
His name is Tim Minchin. And the guy's a musical genius, believe me. He's got some great stuff out there.
He's not very religious, is he?
But this particular speech, no, he's not particularly religious. But he makes some valid points in this particular speech. And if you want, I'll dig it up and I'll link it over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast website. But it was a commencement speech to a graduating class of his alma mater in Adelaide, Australia. But he talks about any number of things that are truths. And one of them is about focus. And I found this true for myself. If you focus too hard on one thing, you'll miss the shiny thing out of the corner of your eye. And that is the truth, because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm working on something, or if I'm trying to, get some landscaping done or something like that, I may miss the sound of the phone ringing. And that phone call being an opportunity to go to lunch with somebody, or being able to talk to somebody I haven't spoken with in quite a while. So I can focus on that, but then miss other things if I'm not careful. I don't mean be scatterbrained, but I mean be open to possibilities. And
so, there's an interesting parallel with a Sid Barrett story, which I've mentioned in the past, but I'll mention it again because it's so, it's so to do with that you just said. Sid Barrett, the first, I guess you'd call him band leader and guitarist, singer for the Pink Floyd band, right, out of England. Back in the 60s, all these hippies and stuff, they were doing psychedelia and psychedelic music. Right. And Sid Barrett was like on the fore of that culture and those trends and producing music, and he was the engine that Pink Floyd rode on for that first point in their career when they were kids in university. And he just had wacky ideas that psychedelia, he was part of the psychedelic movement to a great degree. At one point, he stayed at the house of a friend / painter, artist. And so at one point, the friend came in and noticed Sid Barrett laying on the floor. There's all sorts of stories about his time as a student, Sid Barrett's time, that are pretty interesting and stuff. It's also a sad story. but what story isn't at the same time. And he was sitting on the bed on the floor, which was laying on the floor. There was no, you know, box to it or whatever. And he did this constantly, and he wouldn't stop. He'd just lay on the floor. And he asked, "Well, Sid, what are you doing, dude?" And he says, I'm sitting here." And they got into the conversation. I'm just laying here and pondering. He says, "Well, what are you pondering and stuff? You know, we got to do stuff. There's things to do and this and that." And Sid, and I'm paraphrasing the story. Um, and he says, "Well, I've realized, or no, let me scratch all that. The artist analyzed what was happening, considering his friend at the time and the culture and all the things." And he says he imagined that more than likely Sid Barrett, this young, up and coming musician, was laying there, and all the drugs and all the stuff, was laying there pondering life, existence, the reality of everything. And he was probably considering, this is the artist that was living there, said, and probably was considering the fact that if he got up and went in a direction, maybe write another song, maybe go down to the corner to the store, whatever he decided to do would mean that he would engage down a road at the exclusion of every other possibility in existence for him. But as long as he stayed in that bed without moving, roughly, but without moving, all possibilities were open to him, and therefore all roads he could pick from. So he opted for, I guess, that state. And so this was his friend's analysis of the thing, and it kind of goes to what you're saying a little bit, and I found it very interesting. My conclusion to that is that I think that's true, and there's actually there's actually, I don't know, what do they call it, the mathematics people that do
probabilities
and whatnot. There's people that study all that with math, and it's true. If you sit without engaging for a moment, like right now, we're stuck, you and I, in what we're doing right now. But the truth is that there's a whole lot going on all around us that we could also be engaged in, but we've opted for this. Therefore, we're locked into this scenario with our friends and viewers and so on at this specific moment, at the exclusion of everything else. And it's we're finite, and we can't encompass more than one space at a time, and it just that's what it is as far as we can understand it. And so I find it interesting, that concept that we want more. There's the intent and there's the thought. Sometimes we think, man, but I should be, or I would love to do this. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And these decision makings and stuff, we're trapped in that. There's no escaping it. Is there any other possibility? There's not for us that we're aware of. And so that brings in the questions of psychedelia, religion, philosophy, and just and the question of what the heck is going on and stuff. So yeah.
My initial thought was LSD is a powerful drug.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
That was my first thing, because people on Pure Air don't think like that. You're right. It does get philosophical very, very fast. But then again, the one thing he is forgetting is that some things just don't mean anything. Some things just don't mean anything. And maybe Sid was asleep. Yes, when you're sitting there static, there's a million different possibilities. And the minute you get up, you eliminate some of those possibilities. But then again, you can change your mind in midstream. So while you are, by just the sheer act of standing up, you eliminate the possibilities of all the things you could have been doing sitting down, but that doesn't mean you can't sit back down. So I get what you're saying. We are kind of locked into this reality right now, talking on, this podcast and not yet interacting with the folks in the chat, but something we will be doing later on. But that's by choice, but we still have that choice. You could get up and walk away right now, or I could get up and walk away right now. So I don't see it as limiting ourselves as much as it is, again, there's that word, focusing on one thing at a time. And yes, I may miss the shiny thing out of the corner of my eye, but I'm willing to give that up right now because I think this is more important and this is the priority right now. Now, that may not be the case in a half an hour, who knows? But again, personal choice and action in one way or another, or inaction in any way, is still determined by us. So I don't know. I don't know.
I have to address that. It's interesting.
ahead.
So I'll address that. So so human beings are emotional creatures. We cannot separate. So let's say you have a very tough, let's say let go extreme, like a barbarian tough guy, and you have this frail, like in the Norseman series, and you have the frail artistic Roman guy that was trapped in the northern lands. Both are human beings that fall within the realm of emotional. Human beings are emotional.
Right.
But another thing that we do is, as human beings, since we're all making these independent decisions, but we're also making decisions based on not our own reasoned out and acknowledged information. We're also irrational. We're more irrational than we are rational. And the irrational is all these connections that are inside our library that we've built up that we don't think out. We react to, and we assume that, well, why am I smashing my fist into this person here in the middle of Broadway in Maine? People that can't self-reflect or turn the mirror inward, and there's different degrees of it. They run about reacting to things, and we all have the equivalent of that to one degree or the other. So there's a subconscious level to our behavior and our interaction with others. And what happens is and there's a lot of things that are suppressed too, that people just can't see. They
that's
just
a
can't,
choice.
they just, no, it's not a choice. There's things that are choices, but there's things that people cannot see about themselves because they're locked away in certain corners and hallways within their mind. You may be aware of things, and there's things that within you that you're not aware because they talk about trauma and all that. But what I wanted to get to, what happens with psychedelia, okay, and specifically like things like what do you call it, the acid and all that stuff, things that alter your state, is that it opens up doors inside these compartments in people's heads for the duration of whatever that intoxication is occurring. And this is prior to the psychedelia movement. We can talk about the Indians with the peyote and just all these societies. But what it does, it alters consciousness for a given time, and by opening up those doors, certain concepts that were blocked, just like a part of your PC that you don't have access to, you need admin status for, are open to you to see. The problem is that there's a reason that there's blockage in our understanding of certain things, and we have it locked away in our minds, all of it, everything that we've seen, experienced, and is locked away in our mind. But the reason we have blockage, and this part, we basically have blockage in order to protect ourselves, because we're here to protect ourselves too. And so our mind, not only physical, but emotional and intellectually, people block things and they don't do it consciously. There's things that just get reserved into the
Yeah,
ether of the mind.
but
So well, I'll just wrap up with this. So psychedelia opens those things. For some people, a revelation of those doors, because that's what it does, opening up those doors that you didn't particularly were able to access, helps in understanding. There's many examples of that, but it can also whack a person out because they won't be able to handle it. So therein lies the trouble. So it can be very, very dangerous as well. So yeah.
yeah, but you're talking about extreme examples, though. I'm not. I'm talking about us sitting here talking on this podcast and one of us getting up and walking away. I'm not talking about anything that we have locked away in our subconscious or anything like that, because most of the decisions, and like I say, what I mean when I say we are in control is that we decide, I'm getting up and I'm going out to mow the lawn today. Oh, nope, it's raining. I'm not going to mow the lawn today. Instead, I'm going to do something in the house. We make those decisions. And yes, we have to react based on emotion. There are some people that don't give a damn. They'll just go ahead and mow the lawn in the rain anyway. Who am I to tell them that they're wrong? You want to do that? Go for it. Knock your little self out. Personally, I'm staying in the house. I can do it tomorrow. So that's what I'm getting at. I don't think that it's predetermined or predestined because we do have choice. I think that we can make something, and we've talked about this before, we can make something a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially if we're anxious or nervous about it. A job interview. If you have convinced yourself that you are going to fail the job interview, you probably will. But if you have convinced yourself that you're going to go in, be straightforward, be professional, that's what you're going to do. But if you've convinced yourself that you're going to fall apart, you probably will. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy type of thing. But again, I think it's all a choice, because we choose to make it one, if that makes any sense. There are some things that are completely out of our control. But if it has to do with us, for most of us, and there are exceptions to every rule, for most of us, I am 99% sure that the decisions I make are based on the information I've taken in and make what I think are the best decision for this plan of action. You only have to look at the difference between an 8-year-old and a 28-year-old to see that in action. An 8-year-old may look both ways before running out into traffic to get the ball. Then again, he may not. The 28-year-old does know to do that. That's a choice. That's a conscious decision. The 28-year-old is just as capable of running out into traffic to go grab that ball as an 8-year-old is. Some of it is knowledge, some of it is experience, some of it we think are common sense, but it still comes down to a choice. So the laws of self-preservation do kick in, but when you're young and you're not thinking about things like that, well, you and I both know when you're young, you're bulletproof, so it doesn't matter. So
Yeah,
but
we are bulletproof.
and we know everything. We're bulletproof, and nothing can hurt us.
Yeah. So nothing. I think that that we all have our senses to whatever degree that we do, and we all make our decisions I think that that's the case.
Mhm.
As far as free will, I
Yeah.
believe that that's the case. But if we did not have free will, we wouldn't know it either.
No, you're right about that.
So, um, however, I think, according to Christian tradition, I think that we do, but I cannot prove anything as
Well,
far as things that are, you know, uh,
well,
internal.
let me ask you a question. How important is it that it be proven or disproven? I would submit, for me, it's not important at all. People are people. I'm just a people. I am. And it's not so much a destination as it is a journey. So I'm attempting to enjoy the journey for as long as I can.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
the you are aware that it's your, you know, so the journey. So it's just a journey.
well,
That statement, it's just a journey.
no, I say
I
it's more a journey than a destination, is what I'm getting.
Okay, you've heard what was his name, Bill Hicks. It says, guys enjoy, like, it's kind of exactly what you're saying, with his variations on it of what you just said. You're on this journey, folks. Enjoy it. We're
Mhm.
not going to be back around anytime soon. He would smoke, Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks it
Uh-huh.
was.
Yeah.
Great comedian.
Yes.
So I can't neither disagree, like literally, like sincerely,
Mhm.
neither disagree with it or agree with it,
Me either.
because I just simply do not know.
Same here.
But because I really don't. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
If I knew, then okay.
I
But I cannot say.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe there's somebody out there that knows.
I know.
Maybe there's
No,
someone.
nobody knows. Anybody that tells you that they know is trying to sell you something.
No, but maybe. But even the Okay, look. Out of infinite possibilities, talking about
Hmm.
possibilities, and what's his name laying on the floor,
Uh-huh.
thinking about possibilities and the whole thing, and
Sure.
the truth, the broad truth is that we don't know jack crap.
Exactly.
We know mechanical things, we know daily solutional things,
Hmm.
we know history, what we've been taught to whatever degree. We know certain things, but we don't know. No. I would I would I would be lying if I didn't say that I'm a person that, or I think of myself as a person that wants to know, and wants to know, and wants to know, and wants to know, and again and again, and wants to, and wants to, and wants, just like that, and more and more and more and more, and relentless, and not stopping, and break through walls, and tear down curtains, and go through, and just continue knowing in what's my understanding. And then I understand the problem, that i'm stuck I'm stuck with one thing at one time,
Hmm.
maybe a couple of things in the background that are blurry. I'm stuck down one of the hallways at a time, consciously in my brain,
Hmm.
that I'm focused on consciously. But I'm also aware that there's subconscious things as well,
Sure.
turning that mirror. I know that I turn the mirror away from me all the time, but I know that I can turn the mirror towards me, and I understand that there's layers and layers and layers of things that I don't have access to immediately. I can
Right.
draw things, I could try to force things out of the, if you've ever thought, and you have this computer, and you can pull things out, and some things are kind of blurry, and you're trying to yank it out. Maybe it's a long lost memory, or a kid playing with a friend, whatever the case might be. You just, a situation with a girlfriend, whatever it could be, and you're trying to pull it, but you can't quite get there and stuff. But they're locked away, and it's the whole thing is fascinating. And I don't know how we got into this thing, but long
I
story
don't
short,
either.
long story short, I will say that we are emotional creatures.
Sure.
I think that that's a very and I think that I mean we do the best we can with
Mhm.
what we have, but
And
everything is still, in my
and
opinion, not everything, but the grand questions are still completely um out of our grasp completely.
and that's why I come back to that question again. Is it that important to
Yes,
know all that?
yes, 100%, 100 and 300% for me.
If it was that important, we some discoveries would have been made, I think. I think we're here for all the evidence suggests, and I don't know this to be the case. All the evidence suggests we're here for a limited time. So do your work, do it to the best of your ability, and enjoy the journey. Because that's all you're ever going to have. All you're ever going to have is you and the body of your life's work. So enjoy the journey, enjoy that thing that you're doing, and carry on the next day. That's all we really have. Because when they finally lay me down and throw dirt in my face, somebody else has got to go through all of this stuff, and they're going to decide what goes to the landfill and what doesn't, not me. So how much importance I place on this stuff is 100% subjective. And if I think it's important or I want to make sure somebody gets it, why not give it to them now so they can enjoy it as well? You know?
Get all the junk
Yeah.
out.
Well, no, it's not just that, but it's a matter of, I've got a lot of stuff here that I'm not using, somebody else could use.
Mhm.
Well, why wait until it's too late and I have no choice in the matter? Yeah, it's just, you need it, here, take it.
Last thing I'll say, because we're running, because we have
Yeah,
an
we're
after show
over.
to do. But I'll say this one thing. Uh, I had a neighbor friend, and older gentleman,
Mhm.
and well, he moved pretty within the South Florida, but he moved away, and he used to always walk his dogs and come around, and we'd sit and talk, and he has this whole time of experience, 70
Mhm.
plus years of experience in his life, and I'm this guy back then in my late 30s or
Mhm.
early 40s until he left and stuff. I knew him for all those years, um and we'd talk a lot, and we'd sit on all different types of subjects. We didn't have the same ideas on various subjects, let's put it that way.
Sure.
um and but he lived his life, and I would, as I would converse with him, I couldn't help but recognize when I would offer a fresh idea, a
Mhm.
different idea, that he would acknowledge a couple of things, but he would completely slam it to the side and stuff. And these were things that were that had meat to it, ideas that had meat to it, that could be pointed to. And he would, and I recognized in him that there were places that I couldn't go
Yeah.
with this gentleman. There were concepts that would, and he would have no problem like arguing, like
Mhm.
shouting and stuff. And I never took it to heart, because at the end of the day, just for many reasons, but he would shout, right?
Mhm.
Like when I went overboard on something. And we had this friendship and stuff. And one day, I'm not gonna say the specifics, but basically, I don't want to go there, but he brought, but I'm gonna say this, and it'll he brought me his only photo album with all
Mhm.
his photos of his work, and he gave it to me, and he says, take care of this.
Wow.
And I took it, and I said, well, but do you want me to make copies of it digitally, or do you take care of it? And I took it, and I have it saved there. And there's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot there with that. And that, I don't have to say the rest for one to understand or consider what was that and what's all this and in this particular case. And then he moved away and stuff, and things went in another direction and stuff. And by the way, when he left, last thing I'll say, when he left, we didn't. The last things we said to each other were pretty nasty stuff. Not nasty like dirty lowball, but we had an argument and stuff about one subject. But the thing was that our arguments were always on an intellectual level, not disparaging, for the sake of disparaging, but on intellectual subjects
Sure.
where we would differ. And I respect that. Not everybody has to respect that, but that is what I respect. I don't respect bullying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't respect side references to poke at someone. I don't respect derogatory, but I do respect honor and dignity, even if the opposing side on an argument is the opposing side of an argument within the scope of that. And nothing. I just wanted to add that.
There is one word that describes everything you just summed up. Or excuse me, there's one word that sums up everything you just described, and that is friendship. And it's that ability for you two to have those shouting matches back and forth, yet still keep coming back, both of you, and having these other discussions on other things. That's one of the definitions of friendship, and that's why he gave you that album. He trusted you.
Yeah.
And he thought genuinely you would be interested in his life's work.
Yeah.
That's one of the definitions of friendship right there. You can argue with somebody, and just be so mad you want to stomp off and just go in the house and break things. But you keep coming back.
Yeah.
Because the guy was honorable, had integrity. You may disagree, but that was fine.
Yeah. This is the same guy that I had told you the story before, that he was in prison in Cuba.
Yes. I thought it might be. I thought it might be the same guy. Okay.
Just for simply asking, he disagreed, and he made his conscious his thoughts known, and that was enough.
Yeah,
it was enough to have your individual concepts, and that was enough for the guy. But anyways, any final things before we go? We went in areas that I wasn't even thinking.
Just one last thing. That speech that Tim Minchin gave at the University of Western Australia, it's called 9 Life Lessons. And I will post a link to the video over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page. It's well worth watching. It's a very, very good speech filled with all kinds of concepts that'll make you go, whoa, he's absolutely right. So It's very, very good. I'll post it over on our Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page for those of you listening.
All right, folks. We never know what we're going to talk about. Do we? I don't know. Sometimes we do, but we go in different directions, and that's what we do here. Sometimes we talk about music and pop culture. Sometimes we get into different directions, history, or in the weeds in one direction or the other. So we're eclectic, and we do thank you for coming out and hanging with us. We go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, here on our YouTube channel, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can check out our past episodes over there, and a Facebook page where we, more often than not, sometimes yes, sometimes no, post links and pics of the topics and points that we discuss here on the show. So be sure to check that out as well. We're also sponsored by
Harneal Media, your web source. See how I changed that up? I got tired of saying one-stop website.
I changed mine too.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. That's pretty cool. See, we're fluid. We're flexible. Semper Gumby.
Are we retaining fluid, or are we just letting it out?
That's subjective. That's open to interpretation, and I'm going to let you be the judge of that. Anyway, let's start over, Mark.
Sorry.
No, you're good. It's my edit. This will stay there.
I thought there was a joke in there somewhere, but it went totally wrong. Go ahead.
That's okay. Harneal Media, your web solution. Now, if you're looking to establish a web presence, or if you have a web presence and you're looking to make it a little bit stronger, maybe you want to open a web store, maybe you want to design some merch to sell. Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, he's your man. He can set you up with a website. He can set you up as a web host. He'll do as much or as little as you would like for him to do. If you are an expert with website and web development, he can host you and just cruise on from there. That's Steve Nealon over at Harneal Media. That's HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. So we want to wish you guys the best this week. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
Peace. Yeah, I don't need as long a gap as you do.
You know what's funny? I don't know why. I don't know why, but we either do one or the other. Like, we do a variation of like "see ya" or "peace," but we do it in a. To me, it sounds so 1980s, 1990s, like a goodbye. It's kind of funny how we do that, and it's just natural, huh?
Radio. I put on my radio voice.
It's so hilarious.
It's exactly what it is. I put on my radio voice. Okay, I can close these windows here, and I'll put up Tim Minchin as soon as we're finished with the after show here.
Okay.
So let's see here. Go down and find some more. Yabbity. Okay, Steve C. Is talking about those little record players. They look like a briefcase, pop the top. Can they possibly be any good though? I gotta say, Steve, I really don't know. I really don't know. Rick French is saying with today's technology, they may sound better depending upon the speaker quality. Well, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're trying to convince somebody to get back into vinyl, it better sound good. So,
if it's a crappy little speaker, that's going to be a tough one.
It's going to be a major turnoff. It's like, why did I buy this piece of junk? And why would I want to listen to this when my phone sounds so much better? So then again, let the buyer beware. Steve is talking about true, Rick. I was thinking as compared to the component system when I was coming up. Yeah, I still have mine. I still have our stereo system. I've got it hooked to five speaker surround sound. My Infinity speakers are in storage. I need to get them out and bring them home and hook them up. But I loved my Infinity speakers. Still do.
There's no way it can be as good as the huge components that were available back in the day, like the variety. And I mean, there were some crappy ones, but if you had like a specific amplifier and DAC, system with the tower speakers, or even the rectangular one, whichever, dude, They were
Mhm.
freaking awesome. They
Yeah.
were awesome.
I have a 100-watt Techniques integrated amplifier that I push everything through in the other room. And
Man,
it was not powerful enough to power the speakers I wanted. They were Infinity Kappa 9 was the name of the speaker. They were 6 feet tall, and I don't remember the width on them. Nice looking oak cabinet, and let's see, 2 woofers, 2 mid ranges, and 3 tweeters in each one. And they needed a clean 100 watts per channel to power them. And the optimum system to run them was they called them a mono block. It was a mono amplifier made by Denon, and you used 1 per speaker, and you pushed everything through a preamp through those amplifiers into each speaker. Now, at the time, and we're talking about 1988, 89, those speakers were $1,800 and each amplifier was $400. And I was in no way, shape, manner, or form able to afford those. So I got some much, much smaller, downsized Infinity QB series speakers that I absolutely fell in love with. And the fidelity out of those things, oh my God.
man.
Oh my God.
my aunt, if I think back, she got me so many cool things. One of them, first she got me a desk. Like for a little kid to get a desk, she got me a desk with the pens and like a actual. And to me, that was like, here's your place to work. And I thought that was the coolest freaking thing. And then another year, she got me a stereo like that with the stacked speakers, and it had its dedicated little bin for all your records, and then the graphic equalizer, the turntable, and it was, for me, life-changing. The fact that I could scroll through because before it was like the little radios and whatnot, and the fact that I could scroll through and enjoy like the radio stations. I discovered the oldies through there.
Yeah.
I had the rock and roll heavy metal, but I also had the oldies. And for me, that was like, wow, it was so awesome.
The world just opened up.
It really did.
Okay, Greg Snow Crusher came along and said Techmoan reviewed those new turntables and they are crap. You're talking about the little self-contained units that have the little miniature amplifier and speaker in them. I would probably tend to agree with that. You need a good sound system if you're going to play vinyl, and that's all there is to it. I mean,
it sounds better if you're doped up on some psychedelic cactus. It's like, wow, well, man.
Yeah, Greg also said, there's your problem, shopping at Walmart and expecting quality coffee maker or turntable. No, what encouraged me about it, Greg, was the fact that they were actually selling that stuff again. And they actually had an album rack and a CD rack, because that has not been in our local Walmarts we moved up here in 2012, so we're going on 10 years. November it'll be 10 years, and I haven't seen those at all up here. So it's been at least 10 years since there's been a CD or an album sold in our local Wally world. To me, this was not quite earth-shaking, but it was a very pleasant surprise. So
yeah, good memories, man. Good memories going to record stores. My goodness, dude. But they're personal, right? Like it's like of the era. It's like just the things that to go into a record store as a little kid. And my grandmother, we're going to the mall, okay, and we'd ride the bus. My grandmother would take me down to the Midway Mall, and dude, as we're doing the shopping, there's a record store, and she said, go get an album, and I went to the thing and saw my Metallica, and I picked it up. And she bought it for me, dude. I was holding that all the way on the bus, looking at the cover. Oh my goodness, dude, the feeling of that. But it's Yeah.
One of the best feelings of all of that was discovering that an album was a 2-album set. And when you cut that plastic off of it and opened it up and saw what the center spread was, the inside of that double album cover. And because I remember Wings Over America, Paul McCartney and Wings live. It was a compilation of a bunch of different live recordings from different concerts and what have you. You open it up and you had the entire band. It looked like it had been airbrushed. It was a painting of the entire band in the middle of a song. Just action shot, frozen in time. I always thought that was the coolest damn thing in the world. I thought that was great.
Just awesome stuff.
Yep. Frankie CNC and Working says the sound is better than digital. I tend to agree. There's a warmth to vinyl that you don't get on digital. And Roger the Tinker says harmonics is why. I think that's a part of it. But it's also something to do with the medium and the way it stores the information and transfers the information, because it's all vibrations of a needle, all vibrations of that stylus. And I've always found that fascinating, that a needle could follow that waveform and make somebody's voice come to life.
It's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, it is.
You know what? It's also amazing that a digital ones and zeros can do that too. It's all amazing.
Yeah, and when you break it down, all of this electronic gear we have is all based on and off. Electricity goes here and not over there. And then it's shut off over here and it goes over there. It's all on and off. It's, So let's see, get going down here. Steve Coombs says the sound degrades with each play on vinyl, especially with inexpensive turntables or inexperienced DJs. Yes. And that was something that always cheesed me off, was somebody would come along. You remember putting a penny or a nickel on the tone arm to keep it from skipping?
No.
You never did that?
No.
Somebody would come along. Oh, the record skipped. I put a penny on the tone arm to weigh it down. Don't do that to my albums. That simply means that it needs to be cleaned. So
lint would acquire on the thing sometimes, and you poke at it and pull.
That's why you cleaned it before you put the needle down. I had the little velvet brush, then you like that, and then drop the needle. Whoosh. Good one. Let's see now. Rick French said, almost 50 years of sirens and power tools. I depend on $4,000 worth of hearing aids, plus some lip reading just to have basic conversation. I hear you, man. It's one of the reasons I'm glad to get out. I'm glad I got out of aviation when I did, because, we lived it with earplugs and headsets over the earplugs, and it was still too much. And I'm kind of glad I got out of it when I did without any damage. So what can I say? Let's see. Okay. When you were talking about that new earpiece and talking about it vibrating against your bone, Greg says that's the mastoid bone. Now,
look at the brains on Greg.
I'm serious. He's not just another pretty foot. Did you ever hear of a thing called the bone phone?
No.
It was I'm trying to remember if it was a radio only, or if you could plug it into like a Walkman, but you wore it around your neck and you had two boxes that sat against your chest up here, and the bass would reverberate through those two boxes. They weren't very popular, but it put the bass into that, so you got the chest vibration from it rather than into your headphones.
Right.
And it was a short-lived thing in the 70s, maybe the early 80s. I don't remember. but I never knew anybody that had them. So Al Modessa Woodworking, I don't think you're not talking about a cochlear implant, right? When you're talking about that earpiece.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
No. The thing was just outside of, like, even like soldiers are using it, where you attach it on the outside. It like hooks around,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a little block thing that goes right behind the ear.
It doesn't enter into the ear at all, and it doesn't penetrate the skin.
No.
Okay. Yeah, cochlear implants are another fascinating topic to me. I mean, they go in and they make all these connections to the neurons in your brain and everything, and you have a physical plug on behind your ear that you plug a cord into a hearing aid that fits into your ear. Yeah. And it totally bypasses all of your inner ear, your middle ear, and your inner ear, and everything else, and sends those impulses straight into your brain. That's just
cyborg.
Whoa. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's see. Get back up here. Come on, let's get back up here.
Come on, little lady. That's from that album.
Yeah.
That Wings album.
Yeah. Steve C says, I love the background map, you guys. Yeah, this was going to be one of our logos. And we've used it several times for various and sundry things, but yeah.
Yeah.
I like it too.
I like it too. It's earthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it looks Old West.
Yeah. It's mappy. It's mappy. And
it's very mappy. Let's see. I knew an old man that went blind sometime, and he still turned the light on and off when leaving the rooms. You know, that made me think, Frankie. That made me think, did my grandfather do that? I don't know if he did or not. I can't say that he did. But I do know that no matter what he built, he refused to paint it. And his excuse was, I'm blind. I don't care what it looks like. So he refused to paint anything.
Yeah. It's not necessary at that point, you know.
Oh, then we got into a discussion about Pinball Wizard. How did Tommy play pinball, being deaf, dumb, and blind? I don't think his ability to speak had anything to do with pinball. But your point's well taken.
And winning.
You didn't listen to the song either. You know, he stands like a statue, becomes part of the machine, feeling all the bumpers. No, he's playing clean. He plays by intuition. Never seen him fall.
And plays a mean pinball.
And yes, he had such a supple wrist. Let's see. Let me get going down here. We're talking about okay, Al got a little philosophical with this as well. It's like flowing down a river in a sea. Are there rivers in the sea? I don't know. There are currents in the sea.
In a psychedelic world, there are rivers in a sea.
Time and unforeseen occurrences. Make one little move and you are in a different part of reality.
Yes.
We are locked in one stream that is flowing forward. One little change in motion alone and everything changes, not to mentioning the altering of reality, the psychedelics. Yeah.
Let's pause that for half a second. I don't know, Al, if Al's, well, he is. I don't know about flowing forward. It depends on what the meaning of is. It depends on what you mean by forward, because maybe we're not flowing forward. Maybe it's not. I just wanted to add that, since he's going in that direction. I want to go in that direction too. Go ahead.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's one hell of a powerful drug. Let's see. Frankie CNC and Woodworking says I've ended up with a panic disorder, so I've got to stay in the now. If I think ahead or in the past too long, I get an extreme panic attack. And that's a legit thing. We all live inside up here, and everybody's completely different. I have come to learn that living in the now works best for me, as far as not being the flaming red ass I used to be. And not only that, but recognizing what I have control over and what I don't have control over, which is relatively little. So
Yeah, but these are but just to, and not to use you as an example, but remember, whatever we decide on, these are the tools, these are the afterthought tools that we use in order to get on with life, which is very apparent. But that undertow river that Al was talking about, in the subconscious and stuff, that's there. We're just consciously doing things, but we're also subconsciously doing things that are out of our control.
That's true.
Most people, and not even most people, all people are more so irrational than they are rational in their day to day on the most simple things and generalized things. And the idea of reasoning and using reasoning, not just wildly accepting whatever is offered to us, which you can do, but the idea of reasoning is to know why you think or why you choose or why you do or why a certain activity, direction, etc. But for the most part, if left without reasoning or contemplating ourselves, we hop on emotions and intuitions and whatnot.
But
So there's a eternal duality between the conscious and the subconscious that we have to deal with.
and that's what separates us from from the animals, is we have the consciousness of that fact.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be very easy to live by emotion, but it would also be devastating. It would be anarchy in the streets if everybody lived based on instinct and emotion without some reasoning, without some conscience there, and knowing the difference between right and wrong. It would be chaos in the streets.
Yeah. No, and we have to have that because that's the only way we can function. If we didn't have filters, we could not function properly. It'd just be a nightmare. We have filters so we can focus on particulars and make sense of the world around us. But at the same time, the part that's oftentimes neglected is self-reflection. Not that I'm any guru in that department, but I do recognize the situation. I do recognize the problem. The part that's often neglected is that subconscious part that plays a role in our activities in the conscious that we assume are our decisions, but not really our decisions. They're assumptions that have been built up in little compartments back in our brain that propel us in the direction that we go. So there's also that we have, in other words, it's questioning why we do certain things, which is using reasoning and whatnot. But we're not perfect at it. Obviously, human beings are completely, and we have to get on with life, as you mentioned earlier. So, but it's good to at least acknowledge that there's this catacomb of unknowns.
Kilroy Al says, first record I saw was Linda Ronstadt. Wow. I'm trying to think of what the first record I saw. What was the first record album you remember seeing?
Probably Paco de Lucia, I think it is. Paco de Lucia, the guitar player, the Spanish guitar player or something. in my father's and my parents' little record rack that they had, and then a lady with a Spanish dress and a guitar, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that. I never really, other than seeing the covers, paid attention to it, but they had that. And I can't remember my first record, to be honest with you.
I don't know that it was the first record that I saw, but the first record I remember my parents buying the day they bought their new stereo. And this was 1966, maybe 67, but I think 66. And it was Ferranti and Teicher, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it was obviously the tune that was used in the movie.
The soundtrack, yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't a soundtrack album. It was just a collection, their album that had that tune on it.
Were the other songs in that vein, or were they different?
You know what? I really don't remember because I wasn't interested. I was not in. I was 5. So
what did the cover look like?
I don't remember what it looked like.
Okay.
I just remember that that's what it was because I remember that.
Yeah.
You know, I remember that. And that's how I remember that it was that record. Then they had another one.
Such a classic.
It was, I want to say, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. And I don't remember the name of the album, but it was a kind of a greenish album cover. And it was a woman in a white dress, lots of lace, with whipped cream all over it. And the album was called Whipped Cream.
That'll damage a little kid forever. Like
she was sitting there all dressed up, you know, stuff like that. But
I mean, that's for a little kid to see that. That's what's in store for me.
Well, no, there was nothing salacious about it. It was just supposed to look like the whipped cream was a part of her dress, but you could see that it was all lace and everything else. It looked like she got into a food fight.
Well, you want to eat whipped cream.
Yeah, true.
And she's wearing whipped cream. So,
but when you're 5, you don't think of stuff like that, you know.
No.
Roger the Tinker, the Woodstock full album 3-record set. Yes, sir. I wore out a copy of that. Especially Santana's section there on side. I want to say it was side 3 or side 4. And then Jimi Hendrix on side 6. That is still my absolute favorite live performance by anybody, was Santana's Soul Sacrifice at Woodstock.
To be honest with you, for some reason, that live version of Soul Sacrifice has a certain to it that's so crunchy. And there's a lot of great songs that came out of that, obviously, and bands.
Oh, yeah.
But there's something about that. And his guitar play, not only the band rhythm section, but his there's something like, what the heck happened there? That was magic in that situation.
Well, Carlos Santana will tell you flat out that they were supposed to perform much later. And whoever it was, there was a problem getting them there. So they just kind of said, get your people and get on stage. And he was like, what? He was also, he said him and I want to say it was Greg Rowley, I may be wrong, had just popped mescaline.
Yeah.
And he said he was just up on the stage trying to maintain because it was peaking about the time they went on stage.
That's what I was going to say, that a lot of these musicians don't necessarily, like, obviously I don't like altering mind stuff. I do not condone whatsoever currently. And
there was a reason they called it the psychedelic 60s, though. Let's be real.
Right. But to be honest with you, look at the stuff that they produced, breaking down barriers and stuff.
Yeah.
There's things that occur. Everything's interconnected to a degree, maybe more than we know. And those open doors that they had was propelled by the substances that they were consuming. that
Oh, yeah.
we all now enjoy as part of the thing.
Yep.
But it's a scary thing too, because how many of those people, like Brian Wilson, a huge talent, broke down because of certain doors being open. There were a lot of casualties. Even though along with it came a lot of great work.
Sid Barrett.
Yeah.
Now, Jim Dockrell says Santana was on acid. I've heard him say in 2 different interviews it was mescaline. So I don't know which is right. I've heard other people say Santana was on acid, but he has said in 2 different interviews that it was mescaline. So that's what I've always thought.
Quick thing about Santana. I saw Santana in Woodstock 94. We climbed down. We climbed down along the rope. There were ropes on the hill, and down at the closest stage to us, there were like 4 stages or something. Yeah. Santana was about to play, and we roped down because it was muddy, and we used that rope to. And I sat there, and Santana came out, and people just screaming.
Yeah,
this was 94. People were screaming. It was dark already, and everybody was lighting up, and the whole story. And Santana, standing on the stage, he stood up there and he says, "You know what, man? I don't know where I'm at. I'm blown out of my mind." And everybody went, "Ah!" And he stood there. He says, "I'd like to introduce someone that's very important and meaningful." And he brought out Jimi Hendrix's sister.
Oh, wow.
To the stage, and she walked up, and they had a little conversation on stage, and people were like, "Yeah!" And I was like, "Yeah!" And everybody's like, "Yeah!" And then he started the playing. I was like blown the hell away that Santana's there, freaking Jimi Hendrix's sister. I know, it's not Jimi Hendrix, but it's his sister. I mean, we're looking at and just the whole experience. But he was up there, 94, and he was saying that kind of stuff, and the crowd was all, just insanity.
I never got to see Santana live. Wanted to see him live. Quick trivia question for you. Do you know who his wife is?
Mrs. Santana?
Well, that's her name now.
Don't you tell me Queen Latifah.
No. Okay. No, but she is famous.
J-Lo?
Nope. Her name is Cindy Blackman.
Okay.
She's a drummer. She started out as a jazz drummer, and she was Lenny Kravitz's drummer for a lot of years. Yes.
The one that would appear in videos?
In the videos, yes.
Oh my god, dude, that lady is insane.
Mm-hmm.
The tracks that she laid down on that like now classic album, Are You Gonna Go My Way?
Yep. That's her in the music video.
Dude, that's insanity. That album is insanity.
Yeah.
If there's one album that I would consider post classic rock but fits right in the heart of classic rock, is that album.
I agree. 100%.
Oh my goodness, dude. I haven't thought of that album in years, dude.
Yep. Well, that's Carlos Santana's wife.
Man.
And Linda saved the day again. Whipped Cream and Other Delights is a 1965 album by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Then called Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
You see? It's Whipped Cream and Other Delights.
Other Delights, yes. And it was a strange cover, but when you're 5 years old, you don't think in those terms,
Oh, of course not.
But 65. It's a 1965 album. I was 4 years old.
Yeah, but
I barely knew I was alive yet.
No. But don't you know? But don't you? You don't know. So you don't know priming the. So it's. So yeah,
well,
of course you didn't know, but just the association.
Here's the association now.
Do you like Whipped Cream?
The association now, because it's what, 1965, so we're looking at what, 50 years later. I still remember it.
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to say this. See, that's one thing, but I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna have to say, excuse you me, because when I would back in the day turn on the TV, and you remember they had certain commercials or like aerobics workouts and the ladies there. And I was a little kid. I was fascinated just looking at the ladies jumping up and down. And I was a little kid. I didn't think in any sexual way, but I saw that and I was like, I was watching because I thought it was awesome. There was something else. I didn't know why it was awesome. So there is, and that did affect, I like hey, to this day, I'm to this day, I'm a fool for aerobics workout videos.
You got to remember, I was 20, 21, 22 when those became a thing. So I was interested as well, but for different reasons. And yeah, that album came out 57 years ago this year. And I still remember that album cover. I still remember that album cover.
I mean, how can you forget that?
Let me, this doesn't make for good video here. Is there any way I can? No, there is no way I can. All right. I'm going to have to go find it here. I'll Google search it.
Oh my goodness. And then we question why, and then we question if there's Manchurian on the other extreme of the spectrum. Then we question whether or not Manchurian candidates are actually real or not.
I mean, the funny thing about it is there are a lot of people who have made parody covers of that album.
That's hilarious.
And let's see here. Let me try to pull up a good picture of it.
If she's missing, if she's missing a cherry on top, I'm gonna be disappointed.
Okay, now let me do a screen share here. And like I said, this doesn't make for great YouTube, but can you see that? That's the album cover.
Yeah.
And you can see it's a white lace dress down here, but like I said, it looks like she got in a food fight.
Oh, dude, to me, I've seen that cover before. To me, now that changes everything. To me, that doesn't look, you know what? It's funny as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that cover before. And to me, I never considered it like merengue or what did you call it? Whipped cream. Yeah. I didn't consider or shaving. I looked at it and I said, okay, that's a lady with a white. I never even went further than that looking at it.
Well, the only reason you make the association is because the album is called Whipped Cream and Other Delights.
Right. I've seen it on the internet.
You're right. It probably was shaving cream. But that's a look at my childhood.
You had that at home?
Yeah, my dad bought that album and they played it a lot. I mean, there was Tangerine was one of the songs. They did a cover of Love Potion number 9. There was a bunch of, it was, I don't know if you ever listened to Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
No, I've not. I'm going to listen to it. If you link it.
If you have seen the dating game or the Newlywed Game.
Yeah.
That's the kind of music it was.
Oh, that's cool.
In fact, Herb Alpert did those two themes. It was a big thing back then. That style of music, Little Spanish Flea and a whole bunch of other differents. I mean, Al says, he says, I have 2 of those albums. He still has 2 Tijuana Brass albums. And then he came along and said, yep, that's it. I still play it. So, yeah, it's a snapshot in time of when that style of music got super, super popular for a short period of time. And then it was seen as old fashioned real quick. The same with my parents' Frondy and Teicher albums. They had a couple of albums. I don't remember, and that's where my dad kind of started to separate off from my mom a little bit, because next thing you know, he's bringing home the Fifth Dimension and then Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Creedence Clearwater. And she was still on the hunt for Bobby Vinton and Johnny Mathis, Yeah. And stuff like that. So, but God, I haven't thought about the Fifth Dimension in years.
Is that the famous song Age of Aquarius?
Yeah. Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In, Up, Up and Away.
Song. Yeah, what
Yeah.
great music! I like that music. You know what? It doesn't have to always be heavy.
Right.
It can sometimes be other stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I'm cool with that music. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
It,
Yeah,
it it depends on the mood, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I can still get into some Fifth Dimension, and that's one of the reasons I still like Motown so much is because yes, it's old style. Yes, it's dated, but it's for the most part, well, not always happy, but it's a departure from the other stuff that is heavy. You know what I mean?
yeah. You need a little balance sometimes. You can't just
Hmm.
always be. I wanted to say this actually somewhere in the beginning when we were talking about fidelity music. I forget now. It's such a long road,
Yeah.
behind us. But one of my all-time favorite songs, and I listened to it last night,
Hmm.
and I'll be forthcoming and say it will. e- Most of the time I listen to it, almost always, I get literal goosebumps all over my body listening to that song every time. There's something about it.
Which one?
So it's by Brian Wilson and Van Dyke's Parks,
Hmm.
and the song is called crap. I can't remember now. Can you
Never heard of
believe that? Um, the song is called Orange Crate Art,
it. Okay, no, I'm not familiar with it.
and there's something very American West about it.
Hmm.
Um, that it reminds me. Uh, for some reason, it touches me in an idealistic uh, history, history America Old West, where the mountain ranges and stuff. That's the association that I make. Just an open country. It's a beautiful song, and that song for some reason makes me goose pimple just practically every time I freaking listen to it. It might not be everybody's cup of tea,
Hmm.
either Brian Wilson himself or the style of the song, but for me, I'm saying it's a song. Yeah,
Okay, I've got it pulled up. I'll check it out a little bit later on.
I'll be curious to hear what you think. I don't know. we'll,
Hmm.
we'll see, but yeah,
Yeah, it just it a lot of it depends on the music. Now, let me ask you this: is there any groups today that can give you those same feelings?
of today,
Yeah,
none,
none.
none.
It's gonna sound cliched, and I'm probably gonna alienate some people here, but there is one group of singers that I get I can get goosebumps listening to, and that is Pentatonix. I don't know if you've ever listened to them or not.
Are they new?
They're relatively new. They're an a cappella group,
Okay,
but they are an absolute phenomenon. I'll put it to you this way: their first album won 3 Grammys, and it's 5 people, and they took the name based on the 5 notes, the pentatonic scale, and they perform completely a cappella. If there is an instrument used, it's one guy named Kevin. He plays the cello, but they never do anything in the studio or on an album that they can't do live.
okay.
So they don't apply effects, they don't use instruments at all. Everything is done with their voices. They are absolutely phenomenal. And the notes they hit, the harmonies they put together, they've got a bass singer who can get so low you wonder how the heck he does it. They have a contratenor who is so high you wonder how the heck he does it. There is one girl in the group, and she is not the highest pitched voice. They're all they're all each phenomenal individual singers, and when they put the 5 of them together, oh man, it's really something.
So to attach to the acapella that you're talking about, I
Mhm.
think it was 86, 87, maybe 86, whenever that album came out. But my aunt just very. And my mom and the family, we hopped in the car and took off for a weekend across towards Naples,
Mhm.
Sanibel Island, and we would travel across the Everglades, east to west, and go there. The first thing that my aunt did on that journey that I remember, maybe she would not remember because, from a kid's perspective, you're picking up all these new things and it's more lively and maybe, but for her, she's just driving to get to a point, maybe, And so she popped in Paul Simon's Graceland album, and the whole album is just, I
Yeah.
love that album. It's one of my favorite albums forever,
Mhm.
forever, forever, and ever. But that first song, Diamonds on the Soles of Her Shoes, she popped that in. I forget what track it's on. I think it's one of the beginning ones. But she popped it in, and the voices started with the acapella
Mhm.
with Black Man Mambizo, or I forget the name of that.
Mombasa, yeah.
Mambaza.
Mhm.
And they, Diamonds on the Soles, and he's singing the acapella. And I sat in the back, pushing my ear to the back rear speaker
Mhm.
and hearing the other voices on the other one, and then turning to the other one. And then the song started with the actual song, because it's a beginning and then it starts. I said, "Oh, rewind it, rewind it, rewind it." She rewinded it, right? And we're driving already.
Mhm.
And that first part ends already. I said, "Oh, rewind it, rewind it." She did it one more time. And then I said again, "No, no, rewind it." And said, "No, we're not doing that." She said, "No, we're playing the album. Let it go." And I was like a little bit upset because I wanted to repeat that.
Mhm.
I found such value in that a cappella in the beginning. It
Mhm.
really blew my mind. And I
Well,
needed to hear it again and again and again.
there are few people who can pull that off well, and these folks can. And I mean, they are. I'm very surprised you've not heard of them or heard them, because they are huge. They were an explosion that came along, and it's just three of them knew each other in school, and they recruited, and they've been singing together and friends forever. And they recruited a bass singer, then they recruited Kevin to play the cello and beatbox for them, and it just works. But when you listen to some of their tunes, it's like, how the hell are they doing this without instruments? Then you watch their live performances and you see how they're doing it without instruments. I mean, they just, each one of them kicks in, and, their bass singer, he does a little bit of bass, and the beatboxer's going. And you have a baritone, the contra tenor, and I don't think she is a soprano. I think she's just below soprano. But the way they blend their voices, it does sound like instruments, but you can tell that it's a voice.
I'm very, 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 very biased due to experience. I think we all are, but I'm very biased outwardly. To me,
Mhm.
the '80s, even the music that I wasn't into, was freaking like, what was it? Billy Ocean? Who was the one? All night long, all night, and the trumpet, all of it.
Billy
Looking
Ocean. Yeah.
looking back, I mean, what was
No, that was Lionel
McFarlane?
Richie. That was Lionel Richie all
Was it
night long.
Was it Lionel Richie?
Yeah.
Lionel Richie. So all of the music, just not all of it, but you know what I'm saying. I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but even the stuff I didn't like at the time, looking back at it now, I'm like, damn, that was some good stuff.
Yeah.
And I would listen to it, but since I was so into my heavy metal and this and that, which is good too, I was like, nah. But you had to hear it because it was all around you.
Well,
I look back at it in fondness, all of it.
yeah, I do too now, because there's a lot of it that because much like yourself, there was a lot of it I poo-pooed because it wasn't rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There were a couple of exceptions. I've always liked Motown, and I've always liked doo-wop.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I wasn't into James Ingram. I wasn't into Billy Ocean. I wasn't into Bobby Caldwell or any of those. Yeah, I hesitate to call it yacht rock or easy listening. Maybe that was R&B. I
No,
don't know.
I think you're in the area. There was some sort of like yacht rock sort of
Well,
vibe.
the king of yacht rock was Christopher Cross.
What did he
And
sing? What
oh,
was his song?
Sailing, Ride Like the Wind. Ride Like
Yeah,
the Wind was a good tune.
that's the area.
Sailing,
No, but looking at it now, I'm
mhm,
sorry, but if you're
mhm.
driving around with all the junk that's all
Yep.
there, and you put it on and you put on your oldies or that now oldies is 80s, let's say,
Mhm.
literally, like let's put the
Yeah.
oldies. Here you go, and you come up with Sailing. I
Mhm.
don't change the channel. Whereas back
I can listen to it now. Yeah.
whereas back in the day, you would probably like immediately, right?
Yeah.
I was immediately.
There was I don't know if you remember this. It was before your time, I think. The
I'm never gonna catch up to you, Mark, if you keep saying
the
stuff like that.
I don't remember though. Did you ever see the Muppet movie?
You know what? I did not like the Muppets much back then.
Okay. The Muppet movie, believe it or not, they released a single from the soundtrack. It was Kermit the Frog singing The Rainbow Connection. So we're looking at whenever that came out,
Mid 80s?
early 80s, because
Was
I
it
went into
80s?
the Army in 82 and it was long before then. So we're looking at somewhere between 78 and 1980, somewhere in there. And that was a flippin' hit. When Christopher Cross Sailing came on, and I landed on a station that was playing Kermit the Frog singing Rainbow Connection, I would rather listen to Kermit the Frog back in the day.
Let me tell you another last bit. I just one last thing. I remember just this is an aside, but within the
Mhm.
realm of looking back, I remember seeing Popeye, the movie starring Robin Williams,
So you're the one.
in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
My dad took me to see that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't even remember when it was, but I remember exactly the
Mm-hmm.
experience. And we sat down. My dad liked Popeye. I like because it was something from back in the day, and I would see the cartoons. But now it's a real life experience, and I remember thinking, why is everybody? This is the first time it ever happened in a movie for me. Why is everybody singing? It was constant singing, and in my mind as a kid, like the show tune movies, and in
Mm.
my mind as a kid, I couldn't wrap my head around what the heck was going on here. Like I don't want to. This is not how people act. I remember
Nope.
that.
Yeah. Musicals died a slow, painful death as they deserved. I'm not much for the musical thing.
Yeah,
There are a couple of exceptions, but very, very few. It's
but
just
Popeye
because
was good though. Looking back, because it's free on YouTube, and the other day I popped it.
and
I popped it in. I pressed play and pressed play. I said play. Um,
there's a reason it's free. That was a bad movie. I'm sorry. That really was.
well,
I
he could
sat through the first half of it and couldn't stomach the rest of it
back in the day.
back in the day. Because I liked Robin Williams. Robin Williams was new. He was exciting. The man seemed to be from hyperspace.
Do you remember? Do you remember back in the day? I want to know if you went to a lot of movies back in the day, or more or less.
Well, not all of them, but I tried to go if it interested me.
Another movie that was for me as a kid. My dad took me to see this one. Was I think it was called Beastmaster,
That
and which
no,
a dude in some medieval time, and he had two ferrets that were his friends,
nah,
and
not
they
me.
traveled and journeyed. All right, does anybody remember? I think it was called Beastmaster, and I think it starred the same guy. I could be wrong. That did Clash of the Titans. That one you did see.
Clash of the Titans I actually had on videotape. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
back in the day. But
Yeah.
I was a Ray Harryhausen fan from years back. The
Is that
stop
the
motion,
yeah.
yeah, stop motion animation. Ray Harryhausen was the king of stop motion animation.
I loved that movie Clash of the Titans as
Yeah.
well. And do you remember Time Bandits from back in the day?
I went and saw it at the theater when I was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I remember being about 3/4 of the way through the movie and wondering when the plot was going to kick in. It just seemed to me to be a bunch of disjointed dreams joined together that didn't really have a purpose. But I was young and stupid, so. But yeah, Time Bandits. That was George Harrison's creation, right?
I don't know. I remember going and watching it. My dad took me a lot to the theaters. My mom did too. It was such a good thing too. They really did a great job with the internet. The movies was something that everybody could gather around and enjoy.
1981. It was. Let's see. Somehow George Harrison was okay. The music was by George Harrison. That's where I got it from. I knew he was connected with it somehow, but it was a fantasy adventure film by Terry Gilliam, starring Sean Connery, John Cleese, Shelley Duvall, Ralph Richardson, and a bunch of others. Michael Palin, Peter Vaughn, David Warner.
There was some great stuff coming out back then with the limitations of the time. If you look back now, or I'm sorry, if you consider now all the technical advances visually, even though everything is, there's a cartoon aspect to it that I'm not too fond of. Everything is too much.
And that's where we get into the difference. Remember, I wanted to be a movie maker from the time I was old enough to hold a camera. When you talk about like Ray Harryhausen with the stop motion animation versus today's CGI, if anything, they were better at it back then because they had to be. They worked harder to make it more believable. Now, don't get me wrong, CGI is doing some incredible things now.
It really is.
But you're right. There is a cartoonish quality that does fly with some flicks, like the Marvel Universe. I think it flies perfect because you're talking about a comic book portrayal, and things are supposed to be fantastic like that.
That's where I have a problem.
See, I don't. I think it fits with something like that. I don't think it fits with, you've got somebody who's supposed to be on a windswept pinnacle overlooking a beach. Put them on a pinnacle overlooking the beach. Don't put them in front of a green screen with a wind machine and a little bit of rain, from a sprinkler, and then CGI the beach behind them.
Let me lay out my case.
Okay.
And it's going to be a difficult. I guess we're kind of overpassed, but I want to talk about this because this is interesting to me. As if everything else wasn't. It's all interesting, but. Let me lay out my case and see what you say.
Okay.
So, if I take a movie like the Avengers Marvel Universe stuff, and I take a movie like Batman, maybe The Dark Knight or whatever, we know there's CGI occurring in both but the Batman has a certain less amount mixed in with real world. There's a difference with overuse and constant, and it's sort of like tamped down or within a balanced use of the CGI. And the second point is this: all the difference makes to me, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, is apart from the CGI within the movie, the actual theme and plot of the movie is actually a good one, like a good written out, work to go along with. So, last thing, Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was written a long while back, turned into a movie through Peter Jackson, they used a lot of CGI, but
Mhm.
they they had a script that had a story that was concrete and well delivered. These Marvel things are explosions and this and that, and just
Yes.
dumbed down. It's like, I guess it's for
Okay.
kids. And it works for kids.
Well, now but see, you're talking about the different. Everything you're talking about there is subjective. Okay, I get what you say about the Marvel movies, and that's one of the main reasons that I haven't delved into the universe. I considered it for a while, but I never was that big of a huge comic book fan. So why immerse yourself into that?
Yeah.
It's basically what's I'm saying is when you're talking about Spider-Man shooting a web and then swinging through the middle of downtown, how do you do that without CGI? When you're talking about fighting a bunch of aliens on a foreign planet, how do you do that without CGI? You know, Batman doesn't need CGI to drive the Batmobile. Batman doesn't need CGI to run and fight and beat up on the Joker or any of that other good stuff. So, yeah, there is less CGI needed because it's not necessary for the story. My problem with CGI is when they force it when it's not necessary for the story. You know, I get in some of the Pirates of the Caribbean flicks where you've got this huge whirlpool getting ready to suck the ship down. That's CGI. That's necessary for the story. But if you've got two people standing on a pier talking, a CGI background is not necessary. Stop overdoing it.
Yeah, what I agree with that, but I add the secondary level as well with the Marvel movies. To me, horrible writing, horrible setup. It drags on,
Yep.
and plus the CG. So if you're so you okay, I'm not much. Maybe when I was a kid, but even then, but not much for action packed back to back without so Raiders of the Lost Ark is an action packed movie, but
Mhm.
there's gags in it, there's
Mhm.
intelligent dialogue, there's a little story, even though it follows the formula. But these Marvel things that they're creating
Well,
are
it's
are just
just
unwatchable. I mean,
it's just another genre, you know.
Iron Man, they
Mhm.
have there's good writing in Iron Man, the first one.
Mhm.
So there is
But
good, but if you look at these things where there's a million things happening at the same time, look, people comment on it, and there's reviews all over the place.
right.
The Star Wars, the new stuff with all the CGI
Mhm.
and this and that, it's not just the one element, but it's just like plus the bad writing.
Yes.
That it's you can't swallow it.
Right.
Not
Now,
everybody.
but that doesn't have anything to do with CGI. The bad writing and the poor performances by the actors and the stilted plot and all that other stuff.
It does, because they what happens is that since they're allowed to, just like music nowadays, since they're allowed to, or since they have the ability to do anything and throw anything on screen, all the ideas that were unreachable to them maybe 10, 15 years ago are now reachable. And as opposed to a strong base foundation, they clump all this crap in there that aesthetically works, but what you're creating is like a crazy
It-
Pollock painting. You know,
that's the whole point of the movie is the aesthetic.
watch it and
That's
you
the
tell me.
whole that's the whole purpose of the movie is the aesthetics.
Watch
You're
it
not
if you're
going for
interested.
character, you're not going for character development to a
Right.
Marvel movie.
What? Well, no, not that's not true. That's not true. If you look at the watch them, go watch them.
I'm resisting
Watch.
because I don't want
You'll
to.
see. No, but you'll see. So look, if you were to watch an early, the problem is you're not a comic fan to begin with,
No, I'm not.
but if you watch the early, like
Mhm.
X-Men, the first X-Men, where they didn't use a lot of CG, there's a lot of CGI, but compared to later,
Yeah.
if you watch that and then compare it to like further into the 2000s,
Yeah.
you're gonna start to see, if you don't have a plot and you have great
Oh yeah,
graphics, it's like,
understood. I'm with you there, but the graphics doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Personally, I
I
don't.
told you that
Well, that's your opinion, but my opinion is I don't think the graphics have anything to
but
do
have
with
you
the
watched
plot.
it?
No, I haven't.
Have
But
you read what people talk about? So
no, but I've never stuck my hand in a fire before to know that it's hot.
well,
So
no,
what
but
I'm
I'm
getting
saying
at is I don't think the CGI has. I'm not going to
anything.
argue the point to do about bad writing, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't influence it. That CGI doesn't have any influence on it, but I see them as
Yeah,
two different things.
yeah, because they are two different things, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
What you're not what you're not, because you haven't seen it, what you're not picking up on is it's the same thing with auto tune. Now there's a thing called music plus auto tune and
Right,
other things. People are grabbing from the grab bag of tricks and tools and utilities
right,
because they're available.
right. I
Same
get it.
argument is made with old music. Man, that old music was scratchy and this and that. But man, it has this certain thing. It's your opinion, but I feel that for my taste, a plot
Mm-hmm.
plus graphics in measure,
I'm
um,
with you.
where it's not just a total just explosion of destruction throughout the
I'm
whole
with
movie.
you. I'm with
So
you.
so to me, um, it ruins. So it is my bias, but it ruins to me. I don't care how good the graphics are. If the plot is crap, it's crap. So what
I'm
these
with
things
you.
are just money makers with a whole bunch of like stuff.
I'm with you. I'm with you, and that's the main reason I haven't watched any of them is because I'm not interested in that type of thing. If I want to watch explosions, I got a lot of World War II and Vietnam flicks to watch. You know, so put that into a context. But anyway, but my point is, and it's the same thing with the music and the auto tune. Yes, you can auto tune somebody's voice to hit the note, but if the song is crap anyway, it doesn't matter how well it sounds.
Yeah.
You know, so if the plot of a movie and if the writing is crap anyway, it doesn't matter how dazzling the graphics are. People aren't going to like it.
Unless you're willing to discount like some sort of writing or storyline, which
Mhm.
red kids are more readily willing
Exactly.
to dismiss that for the
And
explosion.
and that's who the target audience was.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
now there were adults that grew with it and they stuck with it because they grew with it. You know, it's kind of like the Harry Potter series. When you look at the first movie versus the last movie, oh, okay.
No,
Cool.
let Usama talk. Let Usama talk.
I did.
Let Usama say his thing, man.
He did for 3 seconds. But um
And by the way, for
now I
those
lost my train of thought. My train
no,
of thought
because
derailed.
no, Mark, I'm sorry. Mark,
Mhm.
in what world, in what reality, obviously in this one, would you or I even conceive of any character to appear within the subject that we're with that crap? It's so
It's
it's
somebody trying to be edgy. It's somebody trying to be cool and doing it for the lulls.
but
And it's just pitiful. It's sad. It really is.
no,
It's sad.
but see, here's the thing. It's like it's so random.
They're trying to get a reaction, and I
It's
didn't
so
give them the reaction.
no.
That's what 99% of this stuff is about, is trying to get a reaction.
I found it amusing and like a
And
reminder
and you
that
gave
there's
them
some.
the reaction.
Yeah, but I don't mind because I found it amusing. See, I found it amusing and a reminder of insanity of
Mhm.
that's out there. So I don't mind. I love how I gave him I helped the guy out. Screw the
Yeah,
guy. Screw the guy.
you gave
That's
him
not
his reaction. That's why they keep doing it. People don't
oh because
react. No,
oh
no, not because you did it,
because I
but
said what I
because they
said.
get a react. No,
No,
because they get a reaction.
so
See, I don't even dignify it. I don't. I don't
number one.
dignify. Just click next. I don't got time.
No, but number one, I can't read what all that scribble. Who knows what?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. In any event,
Yeah.
So Snow Crusher, to add insult to injury after that, now Snow Crusher is attacking me because of Marvel zombie movie. By the way, Snow Crusher, I do have to say, you have just come up with a great combo: Marvel plus zombie movies. That to be discussed.
Interview with a Marvel zombie vampire.
You know what? See, that's why we're paid what we're paid.
Nothing. That's
That-
right, folks. You heard it here first. We do this for free.
oh man,
It's time to wrap it up, dude.
yeah,
It's been 2.5 hours.
yeah, dude, it's your fault, dude.
Yeah, it's always my fault. You know what? I've been married twice. I've got 5 kids. I'm used to it being my fault. I can take it. I got broad shoulders.
All right. So listen, for those of you that stuck around for the after show, we bid you a good evening. Enjoy your week, and we will resume transmission at regularly scheduled time. I don't know. Did I just sound Ukrainian by missing by removing that at R? I just whatever.
We'll try to make it automatic transmission instead of manual like this week. And I will post that Tim Minchin video over on the Facebook page.
All right, that sounds good. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. A lot of roads that we turned into and walked down. So, you guys have a good evening.
Y'all take care. Have a good night.